Hello and welcome, my name is Racho, and today we will be covering Nidus. Why? Well, I haven't really been playing the game very much, and believe it or not, I only very recently actually did my first techno-site Coda. And with the, whatever the resource is called, that I got from that techno-site Coda, I went to the shop, I realized that the Coda Pathocyst was at 60%, and I bought the Coda Pathocyst, and I thought to myself, you know what? Why not? Let's talk about Nidus, because I haven't talked about Nidus on my channel, and I decided to make somewhat of a thematic build with the Coda Pathocyst, as it has a unique trait that is very similar to one of Nidus' abilities, albeit it doesn't have any synergy with Nidus' abilities, unfortunately. So this build isn't necessarily the super optimized build or anything like that, it is a thematic build, and it really is just an excuse to talk about Nidus because I haven't done that yet on my channel, and honestly, while Nidus is an incredibly good Warframe, he is kind of one note. He does one thing really well, but he still just kind of does that one thing. And because of this, I don't find him the best Warframe when it comes to coming up with creative builds, so unless I was doing something like I'm doing right now, I was never really going to get around to making a video on him. So, I'm doing what I'm doing now. So let's get into Nidus' abilities. You'll learn about how tightly knit his ability is and how perfectly it works with itself, and how it does the one thing that it does really bloody well, but not necessarily that much else in addition to it. So let's talk about it. Starting off with this passive. Well, to begin, Nidus is incredibly unique because he gains additional level up bonuses. What I mean by this is normally when a Warframe levels up from unranked to level 30, it gains 3 kinds of bonuses. The Warframe will gain 100 extra health, 1 extra shields, and 50 extra energy. Every Warframe gets this, unless Warframe doesn't have shields. Some Warframes, Nidus included, get 100 extra armor when they level as well. There are only 3 Warframes in the game that do this. Nidus was the first one, then Lavos and Coda later on. But Nidus also gets 2 extra level up bonuses that no other Warframe gets. Number 1, he gets a power strength bonus. At level 30, he will have a passive 15% extra power strength, meaning before mods, an unmodded Nidus has 115% power strength. This is something that no Warframe has. No Warframe has extra power strength, range, duration, anything like that. It is entirely unique. Additionally, he also gets a health regeneration passive as he levels as well. While there is another Warframe with a health regen passive, Citrine, it doesn't work the same as this, still making it very unique to Nidus. So he passively gets, at max level, 15 points of health regen per second. On top of this, Nidus also has a unique resource to him. Not only does he use energy to activate some of his abilities, but he also uses and makes uses of this unique resource called mutations. Some of his abilities will give him mutations. You will see the mutation stacks as it is shown by the number, which is currently at 0, above your energy. And you'll see that the circle around the number is highlighted by the 5 different segments. Whenever you cast your ability that gives you mutation stacks, it will fill that segment by a 5th. When all 5 have been filled, it will give you 1 mutation stack, and you can have a maximum of 100. Gaining mutation stacks does a few things for Nidus. First of all, it increases the power of his abilities. Second of all, some of his abilities consume mutation stacks, needing mutation stacks to actually be able to cast them. Third of all, it will change Nidus' appearance, which is pretty cool. And it also gives him access to his other passive, which is the Undying passive. When Nidus would take fatal damage, he will consume 15 mutation stacks and be immune to damage for 5 seconds, and also gain 50% of his health will be restored. This gives Nidus a health gate, and Nidus is really the Warframe that coined the term health gate, as when shield gating was introduced to the game, we started referring to Nidus' passive as a health gate, which was already in the game previously. And the reason why Nidus gets a health gate like this is because he doesn't have shields. He was the second Warframe introduced to the game after Naros and before Kulavo to not have shields, so being given a gating mechanic like this was integral to his kit, and gave him a lot of survivability. In addition to this, he does also have an augment, which will increase the maximum amount of stacks he can have by 200. This means he can have up to 300 stacks, which will obviously further increase the strength of his abilities. However, it does give his passive, his Undying passive, a 30-second cooldown. Normally, it has no cooldown, but if you're using this augment, you will have a 30-second cooldown. His first ability is called Virulence. The way Virulence works is Nidus will send out a wave of infestation along the ground. This wave will do a few things. It will not only damage enemies, the damage that it does scale off both Nidus' strength and also the mutation stacks as well, but it will also restore Nidus' energy by 25% of the energy used to cast it per enemy hit, meaning simply hitting 5 or more enemies will increase your energy instead of draining it. And it will also increase a fifth of your mutation. It will give you 50 mutation stacks for every enemy hit by it. And so it is really the main source of building up mutation. His other abilities do build up mutation as well, but this is really the best way to do it. As you can see, the more I cast it, the more my mutation stack starts to build. Now, this ability works a little interesting when it comes to recasting it, as the ability cannot be recasted, and you can see it goes quite a distance. If I try casting it again while the ability is still going, I can't. As you can see, I'm getting an error saying ability in use. However, if I go up against a wall and try to cast the ability while facing the wall, the ability will stop early at the wall, will allow me to spam the ability much faster. As you can see now, I'm casting the ability a lot more. The augment for this ability will give Nidus a 120% critical chance buff, which is additive with mods, meaning a mix with mods to make a single crit chance buff, but only for primary weapons as long as you hit 4 or more enemies with the ability. And the crit chance buff does scale strength, which is pretty cool. Nidus' second ability is called Lava. Casting the ability will spawn a lava, which will then grab and pull enemies to its location, grouping them together. The ability cannot be recasted while it is initially in effect. However, if the ability doesn't have any enemies currently grabbed within it, it will automatically deactivate, which is what you previously just saw where I cast it and then immediately deactivates. Enemies are only initially grouped when the ability is first cast, and then the remaining duration of the ability will simply just keep the enemies within the grouped ability. As you can see, they're all now grouped. And I cannot recast it because the ability is still activated. This ability works really well with Nidus' first ability, as you can group enemies together and then spam the first ability as much as you want to build up your mutation stacks. And since the first ability restores your energy, you don't have to worry about running out of energy. And you can see it becomes quite an effective way to build up mutation stacks. Enemies that are killed while within lava for whatever reason will have a 50% chance of filling a fifth of your mutation stacks, so you can get further mutation stacks that way. The augment for this ability will allow you to recast the ability. Doing so will have the ability explode, dealing toxic damages to all enemies within its effect. Nidus' third ability is called Parasitic Link. Parasitic Link consumes 1 mutation stack instead of energy. It will let you tether to either an allied warframe or an enemy target, and will do 1 or 2 different things depending on which one you pick. The way it works is you simply can cast the ability on the target you seek, and you will see a actual tether between you and your target. However, if you leave the range of that target, the ability will deactivate it, as you just saw. If you are tethered to an allied warframe, both you and your ally who you are tethered to will gain a weapon damage buff and a multiplicative power strength buff. So it is multiplicative with your other power strength mods. If you are tethered to an enemy, however, Nidus will gain 90% damage redirection. This means that 90% of the damage that Nidus takes will be redirected to the enemy that you are currently tethered to. However, the enemy that is tethered to you will not move, nor will they take damage from any other source. For example, I will not be able to damage them right now. And while Nidus is tethered to an enemy, he gains complete status immunity. This also means knockback immunity, as knockback is a status effect. The augment for this ability is called Parasitic Vitality. And the way it works is Nidus will gain 4% extra health per mutation stack when linked to an ally or an enemy. This mod, since it is a vitality mod, cannot be paired with regular vitality. But since it scales with mutation stacks, at max mutation stacks you will gain 400% extra health. If you're using the augment for the passive, you can gain 1200% extra health. And the amount of health you get while this ability is activated does scale off ability strength, meaning you can get a ridiculous amount of health. I have the augment activated right now, and you can see I started at 650 health, which is Nidus' base health, and I'm now sitting at 4000 health. If I wanted to increase my mutation stacks even more, you will see that number will go up more and more and more. Something else that happens when you are linked to an enemy is that when you cast your first ability while you're linked to an enemy, the enemy will also activate a virulence in the direction that you are pointing. That virulence will also give you mutation stacks. Nidus' fourth ability is called Ravenous. It consumes 3 mutation stacks and does not consume any energy. It creates a puddle of infestation when Nidus is standing. Nidus and all allies that are standing within this puddle will gain 20 points of health regeneration per second. The puddle will also spawn maggots that will attack and latch onto enemies, crowd controlling them. If the maggot is killed, the enemy dies, or if the maggots are hit with virulence, they will explode, dealing blast damage scaling not off power strength, but also over your own mutation stacks. Additionally to this, when they do explode, you will gain a fifth of your mutation stacks per enemy hit per explosion. So you can build up mutation stacks very fast. The Augment Fullest ability will give Nidus a 6% chance to gain additional mutation stacks whenever standing within the ability. And that 60% does scale of strength, and you can gain additional mutation stacks if the chance is above 100%. So basically, how does Nidus work? Well, he really is just about building up his mutation stacks and being tanky as hell. He has incredible survivability as he gets a lot of health from his third ability augment, and also gains that 90% damage reduction and immunity to status effects. So he gains an amazing... And he also gets a bunch of passive healing as well, both from his fourth ability and from his own passive. So he's just an amazing Warframe and Conquer survivability. He can actually be a pretty decent ability DPS Warframe, as his first ability can actually do quite a lot of damage. And his... he can also be a weapon platform Warframe because his first ability's augment does give you a primary crit chance buff. But he doesn't really offer much in the way of damage output besides that, really. You can definitely play around with him a bit more, but his kit is really based around just surviving by building up your mutation stacks and using his abilities to keep you alive and to manage your mutation stacks, which is why I say he's pretty one-note. He is incredibly good at what he does. He's one of the tankiest Warframes in the game, and even a really good endurance Warframe, even though he has no shields, because of how good he is with how tanky he is and also his health gate. But again, there's just not much more to him besides that, which is why I kind of find him a bit boring. But if you really enjoy Nidus, that's really great, as me finding him boring is entirely subjective. However, how does the Coda Pathocyst relate to this? Well, the Coda Pathocyst has a unique trait where when it is fired, it leaves behind maggots that will then go and attack enemies. As you can see right here, they were spawned by the Pathocyst. So these maggots mimic the way Nidus' fourth ability works, but they have no synergy with Nidus' fourth ability in any way. They won't explode if you use virulence on them, and they will not build up Nidus' mutation stacks, which is a bit sad, which is why this is more of just a thematic build. But what is the Pathocyst? Well, the Pathocyst is a infested glaive that will force proc a viral whenever it does its heavy melee attack. Generally speaking, it is a really good weapon. It's not as good as other glaives like Glaive Prime or Zorus, but it is still a pretty good weapon, and it fits Nidus' theme very well. For Helminth abilities, I actually haven't gone with any Helminth abilities. Nidus' kit is so self-contained so much that Helminth abilities don't really work as well on him, because you kind of want all of his abilities. So I decided to keep all 4 of them. Additionally, as I said, this is a thematic build, so that's also another reason for keeping all 4 of them. I also am not running any Archon charges, I just didn't really feel the need to run any. Okay, so for the Nidus' build, we are running Arcane Guardian and Arcane Reaper as our arcanes. We don't need anything like Energize because third ability gives me all the energy, first ability, gives me all the energy I could ever want. Arcane Guardian will give me extra armor because why not? May as well make ourselves even more tanky. And Arcane Reaper will not only give us additional health regeneration on melee kills, because why not? But it will also give us extra armor on melee kills because why not? Not necessarily the best arcanes you could put on him or anything like that, but I think it's just kind of dumb how I can make myself even tankier by giving me a stupid amount of armor and even more health regeneration. Adaptation for even more damage reduction, which is just going to make me absolutely insanely bloody tanky. Then we are using, of course, Parasitic Vitality for our health. We do have Stretch as to increase our range. Our fourth ability doesn't actually scale off range, which is a bit upsetting, but it will increase the range of our second ability, pulling more enemies in together, and obviously also increase the distance we can travel from between us and the enemy that we're tethering with Parasitic Link. In addition to this, we are also running Augur Reach for additional range on top of that. Insatiable is the augment for his fourth ability, which will give me that extra mutation stacks, allow me to build up mutation stacks really quickly. And Abundant Mutation is his passive augment, allowing me to have up to 300 extra max stacks, which will not only increase the damage of our first by a lot, which we don't really care about too much, but will also give me a crap ton of health thanks to Parasitic Vitality. We are running Blind Rage for our power strength as well as for our power strength. We actually don't need anything else besides Blind Rage because, well, we only need around 180% power strength to get max damage redirection for Parasitic Link, and also we have a passive 15% power strength from being Nidus, so we don't need a lot of strength. Primed Flow for the additional energy as well, and that's the build for Nidus. For the Coda Pathocyst, we are running a very standard melee glaive build. We are using melee influence, and I opted to have my element for the Coda Pathocyst at electric to trigger melee influence. The status chance isn't super high on the setup, so we're not going to trigger melee influence all the time, but when we do trigger melee influence, we will likely nuke rooms, which is very fun to watch. Besides that, we are running Prime Pressure Point for the damage. You can run normal Pressure Point if you don't have primed version, that's totally fine. We have all three Galvanize mod. Galvanize Elementalist will only increase our status chance, but also give us that status damage for when we do trigger melee influence. We have Galvanize Steel, mainly not for the crit chance, but mostly for the crit damage, though it does also give us that nice crit chance. And of course, Galvanize Reflect for our heavy attack efficiency, and also the up to 80 initial combo, which will give us which offers a lot of benefits for heavy attack setups like this, as it gives us that initial combo, and also makes our initial combo recharge faster by not consuming as much combo when we actually do perform a heavy attack. Killing Blow for the heavy attack wind-up speed, and also the heavy melee damage, which is also great. Amalgam Organ Shatter for not only more critical damage, but also for the heavy attack wind-up speed, giving us above 100% wind-up speed. Power Throw, which will increase our throw damage, and Volatile Quick Return, which will increase our blast radius, which is very nice. For the companion, honestly, I had a few ideas. I considered using a Peridotite or the Helmuth Charger. Helmuth Charger would be very thematic with Nidus, because it is basically the companion version of Nidus, and even has a few abilities that mimic Nidus' abilities, though once again, unfortunately, do not synergize with Nidus' abilities. And the Peridiotites are kind of similar to Helmuth Charger, have an ability that is similar to one of the Helmuth Charger's abilities. However, I just simply don't like either of those companions that much, so I went with my old classic Panzerfall Profiler, which is another infested companion, so it still kind of fits the theme of Nidus. We do have Midas Symbiosis, which gives me a health gate, but that is not needed because obviously we have Nidus' health gate. Though it will trigger the Warframe for a cooldown, but honestly, for base to path enemy levels, we're never going to get to the point where you're going to get close to dying because of the amount of health we'll have, so this doesn't matter. But I do reuse my same companion builds for multiple Warframes, which is why this is here. Viral Quills for the additional viral priming. The Coda Pathocyst does force proc viral on its explosion, but this will just give us some additional viral prime, which is nice. Tenon Bond, which will give us additional melee combo, which can give us a damage buff to our heavy attacks. Panzer Devolution not only reduces the Vel Profiler's recovery timer by half, but also means it will actually do something when being down, which is awesome. Synth Deconstruct will give us additional health orb drops, which is always nice, gives us some additional healing. Pack Leader is for the companion's own health generation. Hunter Recovery lets the companion heal us a bit, which is also nice, giving us even more survivability. Tenacious Bond will give us a 1.2 final critical damage buff, increasing our damage for our weapon even more. And Link Vitality and Fetch must-have mods. Link Vitality for the companion's survivability, and Fetch as a just generic must-have mod. The claws are set up for purely utility, not for DPS. Protective Posture will not only will force proc full puncture procs, which is good for priming enemies, which isn't really needed for this build, but still worth noting. However, it will also increase it will also decrease the amount of damage enemies do, and also increase our crit chance against those enemies due to the effect of the puncture status effect. We also have Ballerina, which will also force proc for impact procs, but they will be transferred into magnetic procs through Magnetic Strike, which will increase the damage we do to enemies Overguard and Shields, which is very nice. Bites to increase our crit chance, so we have enough crit chance for Tenacious Bond. Swipe, which will increase the amount of times our companion attacks enemies, which is very good for things like Tenon Bond and Synth Deconstruct. Shock and Claws will increase the companion's status chance and also convert its elemental damage type to electric, while Position Conditioning will increase the companion's overall damage while converting its damage type to slash. Cold Weak is basically just C condition overload for companions, and Bloodthirsty allows the companion to heal itself a bit when attacking enemies infected by the slash status effect. For the focus skill, you can really run whatever you want. You don't need Naramon, as it's not a quick attack melee build, and Maron is only useful for quick attack melee builds. I'd recommend Matarai if you wanted some additional power strength and or casting speed and stuff like that. Vazarin if you wanted some additional survivability. Zanarek if you wanted additional energy economy, which you really shouldn't need for Nidus. Or what I've gone with, which is Yunaru, and the only reason why I've done Yunaru is not for its armor strip or anything like that, though that does offer me a bit of utility if I did want to make use of that, but mainly for the additional armor I get from one of its passives. Honestly, I didn't really find a need for any of the other focus schools, so I figured, hey, more armor, additional survivability, why not? Let's go crazy. So yeah, this is my Nidus build. Like I said, it is nothing special. It's not fully optimized or anything like that. It is just a thematic build so I could showcase Nidus on my channel just to represent how it works, as he is a really cool Warframe, really cool concept. I personally found him a bit boring, but I still wanted to show him off my channel. So that's all I have for this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the build. I hope you enjoyed everything we have. Maybe check out some other content. You might find some other videos you like. And until next time, bye-bye.